Yes, guys, welcome back to another video about football on the Real Raz channel. We are going to rank each team's transfers and compare them to other clubs and find out which team had the best transfer window. I'm a bit late, I've just been away for the last week, so I've had some time to assess things and hopefully I'll come up with a fair ranking of each club's ranks. And yeah, let's just get into it. All right, so we're going to start off with Arsenal. So Arsenal, let's look at it, right? So Arsenal transfers, they've brought in some really good players. We have to be honest. As much as I don't want to, you know, appreciate that they've brought in good players, they have brought in good players, right? So if we go for it, let's start with some of their bigger signings. They've signed Gyökeres. They've been crying out for a striker for the last couple of seasons. And they finally got their man in Gyökeres. He's going to score a lot of goals. He should score a lot of goals. He struggled. I think he struggled in two of the three games when he's come up against bigger sides. He played well against Leeds. But yeah, they've finally got their striker. They've also brought in Madueke for 52 million, Eze for 67.5 million. Another brilliant signing in Eze, who they stole him off Spurs very late on. I don't think that was ever good. I mean, I wish it could happen, but I always knew Arsenal would eventually come in. You got Zubamendi, another good signing. Kepa, good backup. Norgard, good Premier League experience. Mosquera to come in, young centre half that looked pretty good against Liverpool. I'm going to be honest. And Hincapi again, another good player that can play on the left back, can play centre back. Good cover for Gabriel. I don't think they have. I think apart from Gabriel, I don't know if they have any left-footed centre half, so that's a good signing to cover for Gabriel. Possibly push Calafiori or Lewis Skelly to start at left back. So I think if you look at it as a whole, I think Arsenal has had a very good window. Um, they've improved what they had last season. Is it going to be enough to win the league? I mean, it could be. They certainly have done enough to compete with Liverpool. I still think that they needed to get a left winger. You know, yes, Eze can play on the left. Yes, Madueke can play on the left. But they were links to Rodrigo there. Whether that could have happened or not because he wanted to stay at Real Madrid is another thing. But definitely believe they should have signed another left winger. I think apart from that, they've done pretty much everything that they needed to do. I think they've brought in the striker they needed. They've brought in cover for Erdegaard, quality cover for Erdegaard, someone that's going to push Erdegaard, someone that probably will end up playing on the left for the majority of the season with Eze. I just think they've done it. To be honest, not being biased, had a very very good window, and they've also got rid of a few squad players which aren't needed, that aren't up to the level that to compete for a title. Overall, I will give a rating of A to Arsenal. I think they had an almost perfect window. I think if they got the left winger, I think it would have been an A plus. This is going to be interesting this season. It's going to be very interesting because if they get things to click with the players that they've got, it will be scary. I'm going to be honest, but let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. Let's move on to the next team, Aston Villa. Aston Villa. I think they've had a poor window. I've not been impressed with their window. They've signed. The thing is, they've kept a hold of a lot of their good players from last season, right? But I'm looking at the signings that they've brought. They had a real good opportunity. Yes, okay, they're in Europa League. They still had a real good opportunity to capitalize on that, And throughout this transfer window, we're going to see a lot of teams not capitalize on the opportunities they had. And I think one of those clubs that didn't capitalize on what, not just capitalize on themselves, but to challenge what other clubs have done. They've just not done that. You look okay. They brought in Harvey Elliott. I think that's a decent signing, to be honest. But Jadon Sancho, Lindelof, there's a lot of other players that I'm not too sure about. I know that striker from Nice has come through for 28 million. I haven't personally seen too much of him, but I've heard he's not too bad. Um, they've lost Jacob Ramsey for 43 million to Newcastle. The most important thing is they've kept Morgan Rogers. He's been linked with Liverpool. He got linked with Chelsea. There was some small links with Spurs, even Arsenal. So that's a big plus for them. But overall, I think they've had a really poor transfer, to be honest. And I've given them a rating of a C minus. I just don't think. I think it is below average from what they've done. Bournemouth. Bournemouth have lost some big players in their defence. They lost some big players in the defence, especially, you look at it, Kirkes went to Liverpool, Zibani to PSG, Hoyson to Real Madrid. Um, they also lost Ouattara to Brentford in the attack. So, you look at it and they had a lot of money to spend, and I thought they would spend a lot more money than they actually did. Um, but losing that many defenders as well, plus they lost Kepa on loan. So, they replaced them with Diakite, Petrovic, Truffet, um, those three mainly coming into the defence. And so far this season, because we've already seen these players actually play the first three games, I've actually been quite impressed by these players, and I think that's actually boosted their rating. If I hadn't seen them, Diakite has looked very very good. I'm going to be honest; he looks very good, and so does their left back Truffet. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but he looks very good. Petrovic has been solid in goal. I haven't seen too much of the other players. But Adley from Bayer Leverkusen, he could be quite good. So let's see. I think they've got a great manager. It could have been better. It could have been better with how much money they could have spent, because of how much money they actually brought in. I think it's been decent, but because of how there's three players, the first three players have actually started, I've actually given them a C. Um, I think they could have done a lot more. I think it's average for what they've done, but they've lost so much. But their manager is so good, and the thing is, they've also kept Semenyo, which is a massive plus. And he started this season off brilliantly as well. So I think for now I'm going to give them a C. Brentford transfers. So they lost Mbeumo, Norgard, and Vissa, and that's three massive players that they lost, and plus the manager. That's four big assets that they've lost within in the club. And they've not done much to fix that. Coyote was already there. He was I think it was a buy option or obligation to buy. I think they've exercised that. Kelleher from Liverpool for 18 million. I think that's a good signing. I think that is a good signing. Malambu, don't really know too much about. Jordan Henderson on a free at this stage of his career. Not too sure about that. Otara for 42 million as well. For that much, I don't know. He had one good game where I think he scored. I don't know. Who did they beat? They beat Aston Villa, and I think he scored and he played quite well. But for 42 million, I think that's a bit too much. I think that's a bit of an overpay. And Reece Nelson on loan on deadline day. I'm giving them a D minus. I think they've had a. I don't think they've had a good window. The people that they've lost, the players that they've lost, and then on top of that, the players that they brought in. I don't think it's good enough. I think they should have done a lot more in this window, and I think it's good they're going to struggle because of that. I think they're already going to struggle without Thomas Frank, but then the likes of losing Mbeumo, losing Vissa, which was over 40 goals, last season. Have they brought those 40 goals into the club? I don't think they have. I think they're going to struggle, and I think it's going to be a very long season for them. And I think that a D minus is a fair rating. Brighton transfers. Another club that didn't impress in the window. They lost João Pedro for 60 million. They lost Estupinian. They lost to Dingera, but I think they've already got loads of wingers at the club already. Um, they lost Buonanotte, they lost Enciso, and they brought in a few players. But again, I just don't think, is it going to be enough? They're very good at buying players for cheap and making them into quality players. So maybe we're going to have the same situation here with those players on the players that they brought in on the screen. But it's not, you know, it's not exciting. It's not it's not amazing window. It's a bit average, below average of a window for me, for the players that they brought in and the players that they've lost. I've given them a D plus. Brighton are a good team, but I don't think their window has been that good, to be honest. And I have given them a D plus. Burnley are one of the new promoted teams. And then the way I'm looking at it is, have they done enough to stay in the Premier League? Have they done enough? You look at it. They brought in Carl Walker. I think that's a good signing. Like, even if people think he's finished or not, I think that's a good signing for 5 million. He's going to bring experience to the Burnley side. I think that is a good signing. Who else have they signed? They've signed Jaden Anthony. He's actually from Bournemouth. He's actually started really well at Burnley. Marcus Edwards, I think they had him last season. signed him in January, and I think they had a loan with an option to buy, or obligation to buy. I think they've just exercised that. Um, they've signed that Chelsea guy, midfielder Uguchukwu. Uguchukwu. I don't know if I pronounced that right. I think I've absolutely butchered his name. Dubravka on a free or on undisclosed. I think that's a decent signing. Broha for 20 million. We've not seen him really do it. We saw him. Was it Southampton? No, Southampton was last season. Who did he play for? And he did pretty well. Maybe it was Southampton. But anyway, Broha, I don't think that's for 20 million. I don't think that's the best of signings. I don't think they've done enough to stay in the league, to be honest, and that's what I'm basing it on. I don't think they've done enough. I think they've had a decent window, and they've done as much as they can do, and I've given them a C plus, um, with the experience of Carl Walker. I think C plus. I'm being a little bit too fair here, actually. I think we're going to stick with a C plus because that's what I've given them. And there's some decent signings, but I don't think it's enough. I don't think they've done enough to stay in the league. Chelsea, Chelsea. Now this is an interesting thing with Chelsea, right? I think they've had an unbelievable transfer on the basis of getting people out. The amount of money that they've brought in to the club, with all these people going out of the club, for some people that are just not even worth the money. You know, you look at Madueke for 52 million. You look at some of these players like Bra for 20 million, you know, Chukwuemeka for 24 million, and Kunku 36 million. They've made so much money from all these players, you know, Petrovic 25 million. So them bringing money into the club from selling players has been unbelievable. I think the best out of every single club, you know, in Europe as well. But when it comes to transfers in, I'm looking at it, and they brought in some good players. You know, you look at it, João Pedro, he's been unbelievable. Delap, I think he's a quality signing for 30 million. Hato from Ajax, good signing, good potential, can play left back, can play left centre back. I think he's going to improve that defence, which is very much needed. You know, you got Esteval, one of the best talents in the world. Um, but then I'm looking at it, and you know, Garnacho for 40 million. You know, a lot of people say he's going to do well. Some people say he's not going to do well. I don't know, to be honest. I think 40 million for Garnacho is a bit too much. Gittins as well, 51 million. My problem with Chelsea is, right, they were at a stage where they've just come off the Club World Cup. Whether you think it's a big thing or not, they had the opportunity to sign some star quality and add that to this team. I don't think they've added star quality. I think all they've added is, again, which is their philosophy, is to add young players. But these young players, they're not going to be consistent all the time. I think Chelsea needed to add. I think Chelsea needed to add consistency. You know, I think if they added consistency, consistent players that are going to bring proven quality on a consistent basis, I would have rated this window a lot higher because they spend a lot of money on young talent and tried to flip it. But I just think there was a real opportunity for Chelsea this window to actually push Liverpool and Arsenal. I've given them a rating of B because they've sold so much in terms of average players or squad players. You know, they've got rid of so much, brought so much money in, but I think they could have spent the money a little bit better when bringing players in. I think they brought some good players. You know, Pedro, Delap, Hato, Esteval, um, and whether you want to say Garnacho or Gittins, but I think they could have got better. I think they could have got better in that left wing spot. You know, could they have pushed for Rodrigo possibly? Could they push for Rafael Leao? You know, I think they could have improved that. I don't know if Gittins and Garnacho improves. I mean, it does improve their left wing position because they don't really have anyone there. But I think they could have got better. I think these players are going to easily get improved next season or the season after that. But those four of Pedro, Delap, Hato, Esteval, I think are very very good. And so I've given them a rating of a B. Okay, Crystal Palace. Now this Crystal Palace is very interesting because they've sold Eze, you know, and that's a big player of theirs, massive player. Um, but they've managed to keep Adam Wharton. They've managed to keep Margehi, who almost left for Liverpool on the transfer deadline day, but they managed to keep him for another season, or 6 months. We don't know, but at the moment they're keeping him right now. Apart from that, they've kept a lot of their players from last season. And they've brought in Jeremy Pino as a replacement for Eze. They've also brought in the Getafe. I think he's a winger. Iche. I don't know how I'm pronouncing that right. So they've brought in some good players in those two. I'm not sure about the other three. I think Sosa's a left back, right? Um, and Benitez is a goalkeeper. I think he might be a goalkeeper. Is it enough? I don't think it is enough. And that's what I was talking about. I think who was it? Aston Villa on the chance to capitalise on what they built last season. I think not so much Aston Villa what they built, but the opportunity they had with getting in European football again and boosting that team, improving that squad. You look at Crystal Palace; they finally got into Europe, where even if it's the Conference League, they've just won the FA Cup, they've just won the Community Shield, beating Liverpool. There's a real opportunity there for them to spend some money and actually have a go, pushing them above where they normally finish in terms of mid-table, pushing the top 10. And I just don't think they've done enough. I don't think they've done enough, and I've given them a D plus. I don't think it's a good window. With the opportunity there to be had, even losing Eze, there's no guarantees that those signings are going to do what Eze did for Palace. And even though Glasner's a good manager, I think they're they've fallen short of what could have been this window. So yeah, I'm going to give them a D plus this window. Everton. And you can say, okay, that at the moment you're talking about recency bias as well with this rating because they've had an unbelievable start. But if you actually just go and look at I think defensively Everton have always been quite good. Even they've been quite good. Obviously, when a lot of that comes to if Bramthwaite's fit as well. But if you look at the signings that they've made, they've added proper quality, more quality than they did last season. That's for sure. They already had Iliman Ndiaye, and now they've added Barry to that team. They've added Jack Grealish to that team. They've added Shrewsbury Hall to that team. They've added Tyler Dibbling to that team. That is some very good attackers that they've added to the team, and we've seen already Jack Grealish have a new lease of life. He's absolutely been unbelievable since coming back. Shrewsbury Hall's looked really good as well, getting a goal and a couple of assists, I think. So they're looking very good right now, and I think that's down to the transfers they brought in, and with them having the new stadium as well. I think it's exciting times for Everton, and I think Jack Grealish is a great signing to. I think it's a great signing for him, and it's a great signing for Everton. And I've given them actually quite a high rating of A minus. They haven't lost too much as well in terms of players. A lot of squad players, a lot of players that aren't good enough. Um, I think they've really, really improved from what they had last season, and I think there's an opportunity to start pushing. I think I put them ninth before the start of the season, and I think they can get that with these signings with their form. Obviously, it's only 3 games in, so there's only so much you can base things on. And at the moment, they're probably these players are probably going through their honeymoon period, but I think there's some quality players that they've brought in, and there's a real hope. And I think I've been a little bit generous with the. I think I've been a little bit generous with the A minus, but I think they've had one of the better windows compared to other teams. So I think A minus. I'm gonna stick with my A minus to be honest. Fulham. Okay, if they didn't sign the AC Milan winger, and they didn't sign Kevin from Shakhtar, I think this could have been a really bad window. This could have been a really, really bad window for them. Luckily enough, they did. They kept a lot of their players from last season. They lost Andres Pereira, Willian, who's been. I don't think he really did much last season when he came in January. Carlos Vinicius is gone now. I don't think they had a good window, and I think they've brought in, as I said, they brought in 2 players on deadline day that I think saved their window. I think on the basis that they've kept everything and they've signed those 2 players, I just don't think they've done enough. I just don't think it's been good, and I'm giving them a D plus. I've given them a D plus. Leeds. I think see the thing with Leeds and the same thing with Burnley. I'm looking on have they done enough to stay up? With these promoted sides, they need to close those gaps with the Premier League teams. Have they done enough? I don't think they've done enough. I do think that they will still go down. I think they could have done so much more. They've brought in some decent players. Okafor. They brought in James Justin, Nemeka on a free from Wolfsburg, Stack from Hoffenheim. Decent players. Is it going to be enough? I don't think it is going to be enough, to be honest. You know, I just don't think it's going to be enough. They've released Bamford, they've lost Gelhart, but I don't think that those two strikers are good enough. So they've replaced them with Calvert-Lewin, Nemeka, Okafor. It's an improvement, but is it going to be enough compared to the other Premier League teams? I don't think it's enough. I don't think they've done enough in the window, and I'm going to give them a D. I just think they're going to go straight down. To be honest, I don't think it's been a good window for Leeds. I think they could have done so much more. Yes, I'm giving them a D rating. And here comes, I think, what probably one of the best windows I think anyone's seen in Premier League history. So let's focus on the outs right now. So they've lost Darwin Núñez, they lost Alexander Arnold, they lost Quansah, they lost Diaz, but they brought in big money for a lot of them. Apart from Trent, they brought in big money for a lot of these players. And you could question that Darwin Núñez wasn't good enough. You can say Quansah wasn't good enough. Kelleher wasn't going to be starting. Luis Diaz wanted to go, but they've got big money for these players, and they also spent big money. They replaced, aging Robertson. Robertson's still there, but they've brought in Kirkez, quality left back last season, for 40 million. They've then replaced Trent with Frimpong, who's currently injured, I think, and they've been playing Sobostloy there for the last two games for 30 million. Good signing. Then they brought in Mamadashvili, who I think they had an agreement with last summer, which is an improvement on Kelleher. Ekatike, quality signing so far. And then they broke the transfer record with Wirtz. He's not been the best so far this season, but the quality is undeniable. I'm sure he's just going for an adjustment period at this time. I think he's going to be a quality player for them. And there's a reason why they broke the transfer record for him for 160 million total. And that wasn't good. That wasn't good enough for them with all those players. They decided to then go and sign Isak from Newcastle, breaking the transfer record again, two times in one window for 125 million. And this is probably the transfer of the window. And I think there's no excuses for them not to win the league, and they should be winning the league this season with that window. I think, yeah, okay, they bought that Giovanni Leone from Parma, centre half. They probably wanted another centre half with Mark Gahey, but you're looking at that window, and there's not much more you can actually do from a window. That is quality on top of quality on top of quality, on top of Van Dijk signing a new contract, on top of Salah signing a new contract. I think there's only one rating I can give them, and that is an A plus. I think unless you get Mark Gahey, I think that's the only way you can top that. That is an unbelievable window from Liverpool. I think they still a little bit. They at the moment they still look like they need to click with these new players, but I think it will happen with Arne Slot, and I think it's going to be very very scary times for the Premier League this season. I think there's no excuse for them not to win the Premier League, as I said. So yeah, I'm going to give them an A plus rating for this window. Manchester City. Um, so they've signed a majority of these players before the Club World Cup in terms of Reinders, Ain't Nouri, Cherky. So a lot of those players, those three players, signed before the window. So yeah, and but then they also lost De Bruyne, they lost Edison, Akanji, Walker. So they've lost a lot of players, and they've lost some people on loan. They brought Naipan in, they've loaned him back out. Echeverry is loaned out to Bayer Leverkusen. Gundogan's gone to Galatasaray now. And then they signed Trafford from Burnley, and Trafford's had a poor start, so they realised that they needed to sign another goalkeeper. They brought in Donnarumma, who, in my opinion, is the best goalkeeper in the world. Whether obviously Pep likes his goalkeepers playing out from the back, Donnarumma is not known for playing out the back, but in terms of shot stopping, in terms of what he did with PSG last season on that Champions League run, I think he's the best goalkeeper in the world in my opinion, and that's a big signing. Yeah, I think Reinders is going to be a quality signing. Ain't Nouri quality. My problem is with this window. Yes, they've signed a lot of quality in attacking areas, and they've signed Donnarumma because they felt like Trafford's maybe not good enough right now. But my problem is that defense, and that defense. When I look at City, that defense does not scare you. That defense you can get at that defense. Every team can get at that defense in the league at this moment in time. And they've not improved that defense. I don't think that the attacking areas was needed that badly. So for what I'm looking at is, did they improve their main weakness, which was the defense, and they didn't. You know, I was expecting them to sign another centre half. I was expecting them to sign a right back. Yes, they signed Ain't Nori. He's more of an attacking player, Ain't Nori. I don't think they've done enough to close the gap between Liverpool and Arsenal, who are their two, who they're rivals at the moment. And for that reason, I'm giving them a B minus. Yes, they brought in good players. Yes, they brought in Reinders, who's quality. Yes, they brought in Ain't Nori, who's quality. Yes, they brought in Cherky, who's quality, and Donnarumma, who's quality. But they've not improved that the main weakness that they had. They were struggling with last season. Yes, they've got Rodri back now, and maybe that's going to be a big difference. But what if he doesn't turn back into the Rodri he was 2 years ago with the ACL injury? I think they needed to improve that defense badly, and I don't think they did. And I think I'm going to give them a B minus because one injury to John Stones, and I think it all collapses again. And I think they're going to be in a complete and utter mess. And they've already lost 2 out of the 3 games this season already. I'm going to give them a B minus because they have signed some quality. They have sold players because Pep wanted a smaller squad, which they have done. Um, but defensively, they needed to improve their defense. I think B minus. Maybe I'm even being a little bit generous here. But I think Liverpool and Arsenal, I think they've gone a couple steps ahead of them this window. And I expected them. I expected City to do a little bit more, to be honest. Man United. Man United, considering they finished 16th, was it 15th? Maybe it was 15th. Considering they finished 15th with no European football, they have had a very, very good window. And Man United as a club, they're always going to attract big players. They always will. And signing in Mbeumo, Cunha, and Sesko, that's 3 players that go straight into their team, 3 players that improve that attack. Mbeumo going to guarantee you goals. Cunha will guarantee you better performances than other players last season. And they both look really good this season so far, even though they've not scored as many as you'd expect them to, or done as much as you'd expect them to as of yet. They will be very good players for Man United. Sesko's still a bit of an unknown quantity, but he's got a good reputation in Germany. He's still very, very young. 73 million, you could say, is a bit too much money, but that's how much strikers are going for right now. As of recording this video, Onana has just had a here we go to Turkey. So they finally got rid of Onana, and they've brought in Lamens, this Belgium goalkeeper from Royal Antwerp, for 18 million. Again, this is a situation and why I'm not giving them. I think I've given them a B minus. Let me just check. I think I've given them a B minus because of those 3 attacking players that they brought in are good players from where they were last season, and does improve them. But again, the goalkeeping situation is a problem. Okay, they brought in the goalkeeper, but it's still unknown. It's still unknown. Is he gonna fix the goalkeeping issue that they had? No one knows. I expected them to go for a player like Donnarumma. They should have gone for a player like Donnarumma. That's going to be guaranteed quality. And I don't know why they just didn't even try and make a move for him. And then they also needed a midfielder. And they could have done a little bit more. I think they could have done a little bit more still. With the players that they've lost, I don't think any of them are really going to hurt them. Losing Højlund, I think that had to happen. Sancho is going to happen. Garnacho going to happen. All these players, I think they had to go. So the players that they had to go, they got rid of. But I think they could have done more with bringing players in. And because they just haven't looked that good this season, to be honest. And that midfield spot, though, there's a bit of a hole in that midfield at the moment. So yeah, let's see. I'm going to give them a rating of a B minus at the moment. Newcastle. Now, the whole of the summer, it was all about Isak to Liverpool. Isak to Liverpool. And obviously, Newcastle were only going to sell if they got replacements. They managed to bring in 2 replacements. They brought in Walter Marder and they brought in Johan Visser, who they hope both together will put up the numbers that Isak has put up the last couple of seasons. We know Visser scored 19 goals last season, and we know Walter Marder is a massive talent. He's 6'6", I think. He's an absolutely huge presence for them up front. I think Walter Marder has a high ceiling, and I think him and Visser as a replacement for Isak, is it gonna? I don't. It's not better than Isak, but there's a lot of potential in Walter Marder. Jacob Ramsey for 43 million. I think that's a bit of an overpay. Um, bit of an overpay, but does improve their depth. Um, Malik Thiel from AC Milan. I think he's quite a good centre half. Again, a little bit more than you probably would expect, but I think he's a good centre half. I think he's going to improve that quality in defence. Ramsdale on loan, good signing, good backup, or could even push Pope. Good signing. Alanga, another good signing. But again, it's not. I think they're in the Champions League. They've had a window where a lot of players have not wanted to go to Newcastle, but they've signed good players, but I think they could have signed better players. And again, I think they're another club that hasn't capitalised on the opportunity that they had in terms of being in the Champions League. And for that reason, I'm giving them a B minus. I think they've done well with what the situation they had in terms of the whole Isak drama, bringing in Walter Marda and bringing in Vissa. I do think, as much as Walter Marda has a massive ceiling, I think 70 million is still a bit of an overpay. Alanga for 55 million, bit of an overpay. But I think they could have got better players. There was there was an opportunity there to take the next step to become a consistent Champions League team. And maybe these players could help, but it's not a guarantee. So that for that reason, I've given them a B minus. Nottingham Forest. Now, Nottingham Forest in my Premier League predictions actually put them quite low, right? But they've actually done really well this window. They've signed some good. They've signed some good players. They've also kept the core of their team, which is very important. Keeping players like Murillo, Milenkovic, you know, like Anderson and Morgan Gibbs White. I think these are massive players for them, and they've managed to keep them. They had the whole Morgan Gibbs White saga with Spurs, and they managed to keep him, and that's massive for Forest. They've signed some good players. They've signed James McAtee. They signed Hutchinson for 37, and that's a bit of an overpay. They've signed some good players in terms of Kali Mwendo. Dan Ndoye from Bologna has done very, very well for them so far. Igor Jesus is a striker. They have and Douglas Luiz as well, and experience in Zinchenko on deadline day. I think they've had a good window. Apart from losing Elanga for 55 million, they've got rid of a lot of players as well. That again, I think they've improved their squad and they've got rid of a lot of squad players, and I think they've had a better window than many Premier League clubs. And I'm going to actually give them a B plus. I think they've had a good window, keeping the players that they had, improving on the players that they got rid of, improving on that squad that they had last season. And I think that they've not started the season that well, to be honest, but they have definitely had a good window. And I've given them a B plus because I think they've had one of the better windows compared to other teams this season. Sunderland, I think Sunderland have done very, very well. As I said, when I'm looking on the promoted teams, I'm looking, have they done enough to try and stay up and close the gap with the Premier League teams? And I think Sunderland have done exactly that. You look at the players that they signed: Granit Xhaka, Mukiele, Gertruda, even players like Brian Robbie, even if he's not done that well for Ajax, he's still a player that's got that experience playing in the Champions League. Adingra is a good winger. They've signed some good players there. Didn't they sign that left back as well? I don't know why he's not on there. Ronaldo? Oh no, he is there. He is there. From Atletico Madrid on a free. Ronaldo. I don't know if I've said that name right. They've signed some good players with players that have played at the very top, and I think they're gonna. I think they've done enough to try and stay up this season, or maybe even do more than that, just staying up. I think they've done very well. They lost Joe Bellingham for 32 million, but they've definitely improved their squad. They've definitely closed the gap with other Premier League clubs, and I think they're gonna have a good season. This season, I think they will be the promoted team that stays up. I did say that in my prediction, and with these signings now, I think they will stay up. And that Newcastle Sunderland game is going to look very spicy indeed in terms of that derby game. Um, and I've actually given them an A rating. I've given them the same rating as Arsenal. It's not on the basis that for Sunderland, for them that is an A rating. They can't really do much more than what they've done. I think that is a very, very good window for them, and I've given them an A rating. Okay, Tottenham. Um, See, the thing is with Spurs, very interesting, right? So they've lost Son, massive club legend for 20 million. Højbjerg was already obligation to buy. I think that was already done. They've also got rid of loads of players on loan to develop. Thing with Spurs, we came in this window and we wanted proven quality. We wanted proven quality on because the last couple windows, it's always about bringing in young players, especially last summer. We only brought in one guaranteed start in Solanke. This season, I think the Spurs fans have been crying out for players that are going to make a difference now, players that are going to be starting now, players that are going to compete with other players and are going to make a difference now. And you look at it, we signed Mohamed Kudus, you signed João Palhinha, you signed Xavi Simons, you signed Colin Moani. Those four players, and even Kevin Danzo, even though there was an obligation to buy in January, which has been activated this summer, those five players are guaranteed to improve the squad. They're going to improve the squad. And this summer, Kudos, Palinha, Simons, and Moani, they've got experience at top clubs. They've got proven quality, and I think it's going to improve Tottenham a lot. And then we've got Tel as well. We've got Tel, Vuskovic, and Takai. Vuskovic we signed 2 years ago from Hajduk Split. He's just joined the club now, and he's gone. We've loaned him out. Kota Takai, I think he's injured at the club at the moment. And Matisse Tel from Bayern Munich, we made it on a permanent. We need to see a little bit more from Tel, but there's no questions that there's a lot of potential there. And you see with Tel right now, there's an opportunity there for that left wing spot to be taken, and he just needs to when he gets that opportunity, he needs to take it. And so far, he hasn't taken it. He's still very young, still only 20 years old. But overall, I'm looking at it. I wish Spurs signed another left winger with proven quality that would start. We were linked with Savinho. There's talks that we're going to go back for Savinho in January, and also a left-sided centre half that could play left back as well. I think those were two positions that were needed this window. Yes, Colin Moani and Xavi Simons can both play on the left. Maybe you will see Xavi Simons play on the left and Kulu in the middle. But yeah, let's see what happens then. As you said, left winger needed, left centre half or left back needed, and for that reason, I've given them a B. There was also that whole problems with Morgan Gibbs White, the problems with Eze. I think we had to still bring in someone of that quality in that midfield spot, and I think we have done that with Xavi Simons. So yeah, overall, I'm going to give them a B because we've brought in proven quality, but there was still more to be done in this window. So I've given Tottenham a B rating. West Ham. Now, West Ham, I think, have an absolute stinker, to be honest. Absolute stinker of a window. Tadibo, I think, was was an obligation to buy from last summer. They've just made that permanent. They've signed a Diouf from Slavia Prague. He's more of an attacking left wing back. Carl Walker Peters on a free. A lot of these players are from not Carl Walker Peters, Hermanson, Fernandez, all from relegated sides. Have they done enough to improve their squad last season? Have they done enough to get them out of a situation where people are looking at them right now and thinking they might be going down? I don't think they've done anything to improve that squad. There's a lot of players that are hit or miss. You look at there was a lot of talk about Hermanson from Leicester City, the goalkeeper. He was going to be quite good. I also said in my prediction video that he's going to be quite good because that's what I heard. He's been absolutely horrific since coming in. Mateus Fernandez from Southampton for 42 million is a massive overpay. And it's just losing Mohamed Kudus as well, losing Edson Alvarez. I just think they're in big trouble this season. Unless they change their manager, I think they're in a big trouble. And I don't think they've done anything in the window to help them out in the slightest. And I've given them the lowest rating of this video with an E rating. I think they've had a bad window, and I'm going to give them an E. And continue that, I think Wolves have also had an absolute stinker. Um, they've sold Matheus Cunha, they sold Eight Nuri, they lost Neto the season before, and they have done absolutely nothing, in my opinion, to help them out in the situation, similar to West Ham. And I think they're going to be in big trouble again, big trouble this season as well. They haven't started that well this season. They've added a lot of pace into the team. I've only seen them in one game, which was the Man City game, and they've added a lot of pace into the team. Um, but it's just not going to be enough, I don't think. I think they've had a really bad window as well. And I'm also going to give them a rating of an E. So that's two ratings of an E back to back. I don't think Wolves and West Ham have done nothing near enough to be able to be in a situation to be even safe in the Premier League at this moment in time. You know, especially Wolves. You know, because West Ham, you look at it, they've still got Paqueta, they've still got Bowen, and with Wolves, there's not many players in that team that you can say that are gonna, when the team is struggling, that is gonna turn up in these big moments. So I think Wolves are gonna have a really really poor season. I think I predicted them to get relegated. I still think they will get relegated. And I've given them a rating of an E, and because they've done nothing to show me why they should be staying in the Premier League this season. So, who is my winners of the transfer window? Obviously, I've done the rating, so all of you guys know the winners of the transfer window is Liverpool. I think they've had an absolutely unbelievable window, as you said. If they got Gahey, that would have been it. But yeah, you look at Liverpool, you look at Arsenal, you look at Sunderland. I think those three have had the best window. Yeah, so let me know. Like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Let me know if these transfers ratings are good enough, if they're absolutely rubbish. Just let me know down below in the comments. Please like, please subscribe, and yeah, goodbye.